Welcome to another episode of Courageous Me. And this week we have got the incredible Grace Molloy, who is the CEO of Menopause Friendly Australia. And she will talk about that because menopause is definitely a hot topic. But Grace is so much more than the work she does. And I was lucky enough to have a coffee with her just recently. And holy mackerel, you are in for a treat. She has got courage running through her veins. So, Grace, before you share a little bit about who you are and where you're at and why you're here, could you just share with us why you're excited to have this conversation with me today about courage?
Thank you. What an introduction. It was such a pleasure to meet you in person when we got to have a cup of coffee and meet one another through a mutual friend, which is such a great way, I think, for women to spread our networks and introduce people to amazing others. So thank you for having me on the podcast. Courage is a word that I speak almost every day. When we started talking about your podcast and you mentioned about courage, I think I said to you, it's actually one of our family values. And I've got two children. I run my house really, I'm a bit of a nerd. I run it really like I would an organization. You know, we've got values, we check in, we've got plans, how we're going towards what we want to achieve. And so courage is one of our four family values that we selected together. And we have courage written on the back of one of our placemats. So every night when we have dinner with my children, when they're with me, we have placemats and we each have one of our values on the back of the placemat. And we turn it over while we're eating dinner, and each of us go around the table and talk about that value and how we've either showed that value ourselves in the day, or if we've seen others that we've really appreciated for one of those values. And courage is one of them. And it's actually the one that people in our family don't like to get, because it's really hard sometimes to think about how you've shown courage in a day-to-day way. We sort of think of courage as being this really big thing that's very, full of valor and, putting yourself in harm's way. But really, I think it's great to have a conversation about showing courage in small things and in small ways as well throughout the day. So, very long answer to why I'm excited about talking about courage is something that's really important to me as well.
But I love that you're doing that with your children. And I do know when you did originally share that story with me, and it was like, oh, wicked. Like I was literally fist pumping, going, how cool to get kids understanding that courage is not always the big, huge, like I said, jumping off cliffs or something. Courage is just something in your everyday, showing up or doing that one little thing that you wouldn't otherwise do. So how beautiful, though, to know that your kids are growing up and that is one of their values. Oh, that floats my boat. Totally floats my boat. So, Grace, you are obviously the CEO of Menopause Friendly Australia, but I know that this is not where you started out in your career and your background. Could you just give us a little bit of an insight into who you are and where you've come from? Because it really, I know when I first learnt, it is fascinating.
How long have we got? I mean,
We've got 4 hours.
when I start talking about all the different types of things I've done, it sort of hits me that I probably need to check why I've done so many different things. But I feel like now where I've got to in my career and in my life is where I need to be and where I should be. And actually, when I look back at all the different things I've done to get to here, it all kind of makes sense, and it comes into a nice kind of pieces of the puzzle. And I've collected lots of different skills and experiences and courage throughout that's led to me being here and being able to be an effective and hopefully powerful CEO of an organisation that's got a really big mission to support people through menopause. So, but I started out life, actually, I'm the daughter of an obstetrician gynecologist and a midwife. There's no guessing how they got together. I'm an Irish Catholic family, and health and women's health was always discussed in our household. My dad was a really old school obstetrician gynecologist who used to give all his patients his home phone number and his mobile phone number. It was probably before mobile phones. And so we had patients ringing the house and answering the phone, and my mum being a midwife, there was a lot of conversation about women's health. But my parents said, do not go into health. You really don't want to become a doctor. It's so much work and so much emotions, and it's a really difficult job. You know, if you want to have a really nice life, go and be an accountant or something like that. Don't be a doctor. And so, like many people, I was really influenced by that. And even though I really felt a connection with health and wellness, and I really wanted to, I loved human biology at school and fascinated by our bodies. I did listen to that advice, and I became an accountant. So, which my dad actually then I think was like, oh, it's kind of boring. So I have to tell people my daughter's an accountant. Like, it's not that interesting. So I did.
You don't come across as an accountant either, by the way, Grace. And I love accountants. I work with a lot of them, but
Yeah.
you're not a typical accountant. Yeah.
And yeah, so I probably should have listened to that. But yeah, so I did a financial statement auditing, so really quite dry type of accounting as well. And I worked for a Big Four accounting practice, which was actually a really great experience. And I was actually, for some reason, quite good at accounting, and I ended up winning a prize to go to New York and to do a little bit of work experience in New York. And the prize was from the Institute of Chartered Accountants Australia, and it was meant to be this great kind of career prize where you see what you can achieve globally and what a career in accounting can bring you. But it had the complete opposite effect on me. I went to New York and I was working on a Deutsche Bank audit, and I was living in the middle of Times Square and then commuting down to Wall Street. You know, it sounds really amazing. But it struck me then, if this is the height of where I'm going to get to in this career, and if this is what the job is, it's kind of not for me. And so that took courage to come back and say to the Institute of Chartered Accountants, thank you for that prize. I'm actually going to quit accounting now.
Oh my God. And how long had you been doing it at this point?
So I had been doing it only for 2.5 years. So I was a grad at the Big Four firm, and I had great experiences and I learned a lot. But yeah, for me, I sort of always have this feeling of life's really short. And I think growing up in a household where you have medical people in that world and you see things going wrong for people, I think you realise that, you know, life is short, and if you're not enjoying something or something doesn't sit well, or if you're doing something for other people, which is what I was doing, you have to stop and you have to say, no, I actually don't think this is for me, even though there's a lot of people who have expectations on me, even though I'm quite good at it and I can see that I probably have a good life in being potentially a partner of an accounting firm one day. I just don't feel this is where I should be. And so I'm going to pull the pin. Yeah, so I'm failing and pulling the pin, I guess, in terms of feeling like a failure, but also kind of putting yourself first and saying, I think this is more important to stop now and say, no, actually, I don't think this is going to bring me joy in my life, and I'm going to be a bit selfish.
Which is absolutely remarkable, because most people, you're 2.5 years in, you've done your studies, and you're saying, this is not for me. Most people would have stuck it out, or at least stuck it out for longer, especially on the back of winning that award and, you know, having that experience going over to New York. Did you, though, as much as part of you is going, you know, this is not for me, did you have an idea of what was? Because obviously your parents have talked you out of going down the medical route. So accounting, no, but was there something else kind of burning inside you, or any ideas?
Yeah, it was a difficult time because I didn't really have an alternative. So it's harder to pull the pin on something if you go, oh, actually, I've really decided I want to do this other thing, become a physiotherapist, then you can go and do that. But it wasn't the case of that. It was really, I'm not happy in doing this. I'm not sure what it is. So it was a lot of discussion with my family again, saying, what am I going to do? I've done all this study, and it's not wasted. It's never wasted, because I still use those skills that I developed in those experiences today. But no, I didn't really have this burning thing. And I think when I look back to my schooling, and I was really fortunate. I went to a great school, and I had lots of opportunities to do extracurricular activities and different things. But it was still in the time where it was, here's the book of courses that you can do at university, and you pick one of those. We'll do an aptitude test or a personality test for you, and it will tell you what you're really suited to, and then just pick one of those courses in university and go and do that. Which, you know, in bringing up my children, I certainly have a bit of an aversion against, you know, so these are all the experiences and ways that you can experience life, but choosing a degree and having to go down that path as the only choice just didn't really fit. So I decided then to go and become a professional golfer, which might shock a few people because I don't kind of look like a golfer. It's not many women that are in my age group that play golf or played it growing up. But we played a lot of golf in my family. I had two sisters and a brother. We all played golf quite competitively. I was on state teams and things like that. So I decided, well, I really do like golf. So maybe I'll just go and be a professional golfer. So that's what I did.
No, you don't look like a golfer. Not that I know what a golfer looks like. But you didn't look like an accountant either. So this is quite hilarious. But I love that you've gone from, I don't want to do this accounting thing anymore. I know, I'll go and be a professional golfer. Yeah. So how did that happen? What did you do? Like, where do you go from having this idea, yes, you play golf, to actually making it something other than just a bit of fun?
Yeah, it was. I was actually on the board of Golf WA and the amalgamation committee when the men's and women's golf associations combined, and it took us 4 years to get the men's association and the women's association together because there was a lot of ingrained kind of gender specific things that's kind of also, when I look back, led me to kind of where I am here too. But so I knew a lot about the industry of golf and the pathways and the jobs that could be, that I might enjoy. And I love talking to people. I love engaging with people. So I thought, well, I'd love to actually coach golf, train people to be golfers. And so the pathway to that is becoming a professional golfer through the Professional Golfers Association, who have a traineeship. So you have a 3-year traineeship where you go and work at a golf club. You have to do study through that as well, and you play competitive golf against the other people that are doing the traineeship. And then at the end of that, you have this traineeship certificate that allows you to then earn money from coaching others. So you are a coach, but you can also then go and play professionally if you want to. You can apply to get into playing in the different tours around the world. So I thought I'll do that. And rather than doing it in Perth, where I'm from, I'll go to the Mecca of golf, which is Melbourne. So I moved to Melbourne. I was really, really fortunate again to have the opportunity to do my traineeship at Victoria Golf Club, which is one of the most prestigious and beautiful golf clubs in the world, I think, and in Australia certainly, and on the Sandbelt, which is a whole bunch of golf courses in Melbourne that are pretty spectacular. So I flew off to Melbourne by myself without knowing anyone really there or having ever played many of the golf courses there, and thought I'll just go over to Melbourne because that's where it's the best place to do it. So, and I needed a sea change.
Wow. How old are you at this point?
So I was 20. Oh my goodness. It was 2022.
Oh, so you're little still. Yeah. Wow. When you say part of going through what you had to do, you had to study. What did you have to study? Like, what do you study with golf?
There's different modules. So they want to also equip you not only to be training golf as a career, but also working and running pro shops within golf clubs. So running a business, really. So there's business modules. There's lots of modules about obviously how to coach people and the mechanics of that. There's modules about the golf equipment and how to even practical things like put a grip on a golf club, which you learn a lot on the job, but you also study as well. And I think, again, I quickly realised when I started this that this wasn't going to be for me. When I was playing against, because I was 22, actually, I was older than most of the people doing it. There was a lot of young boys who wanted to play on tour, and this was a pathway for them to get there. So there were young guys. I think I was there was about 70 people in Victoria doing it, and I think I was one of 3 girls. three women. So it was a lot of very male dominated, obviously, but also they had all known each other. There was a lot of a community around it, and I was coming in as this outsider. I didn't really know anyone, and I also just with the units that I was studying and the things I thought I don't feel like after 3 years of this I'm going to get to a higher. It's not going to advance me in where I want to be. And so I started thinking about, well, what are the other pathways that might get me to where I want to be, which is working in golf. Without continuing on this, because a lot of what you're doing is working in a pro shop and selling Mars bars. So I was just really bored. And I loved being around golf, but and I love the camaraderie of the sport's great. But I just sort of thought, no, I actually think this is a mistake. I don't think this is going to advance me in these 3 years that I'm putting into this. And I was miserable. I'd actually met my now ex-husband before I left, and we were doing a long distance relationship while I was in Melbourne. So I was also pretty miserable personally as well doing that.
Oh, man. And what did your parents think? Okay, we told her don't go to medicine. And said go accounting. She did accounting. She's left accounting and became golf. What did they think of the golf thing before you decided it wasn't for you?
Well, they loved it, and they really supported me to do that, to help me to move to Melbourne. And because my dad's passed now, he passed last year, but he was a huge golfer, loved golf. And so he was thrilled that, because it was so much nicer to say my daughter's going to be a professional golfer than my daughter's an accountant. So, so he was pretty thrilled. He wasn't so thrilled after 5 months when I said, I'm coming back. I'm pulling the pin.
This is my next question. Given that you didn't go down that path, at this point, you've now decided that golf's not your thing either, because you're sick of, the pro shop and the Mars bars. Where are you at? What are your thoughts on, because you were making a comment before about, where you want to go. Like, did you start to have a really clear picture of what that looked like beyond golf?
I didn't have a clear picture, but I was sort of starting to feel, well, I have actually put a lot of time and commitment and energy into becoming an accountant, and I've got some skills there. I also really love the sport of golf, and I'm really wanting to do something in that. So where's another pathway? And I think that's probably looking back, and people have sort of said this to me about the jobs that I've taken or the way that I've kind of moved about in my career, is that I have always been fairly intentional in looking at what will be the outcomes of me doing this, and who do I aspire to? Who are the people that really inspire me in what they're doing and the difference they're making and the impact, and how can I maybe get to doing a similar thing?
So you've always been intentional.
Yes, I think when I look back at what I've done, I've always thought, well, how can I get to this point, or this? I really am inspired by this person. So in thinking about that, I thought, well, there's always a different way, and there's always, can start a new beginning. So I actually looked on Seek, like many of us do, and we're thinking, oh, let me be inspired by some jobs that are around. And there was a golf course in Perth that was advertising for a really junior level corporate golf organizer within the golf course. So I applied for that job, and knowing that obviously I had some skills that I could also bring that might be a bit different. I've got that job. So I moved back to Perth, and I started working at a public golf course called Burswood Park Golf Club, which is no longer in Perth anymore, because we've got our great big Optus Stadium right on the spot where the golf course was, our new AFL stadium. So, but I worked there, and I then worked my way up very quickly, started doing the bookkeeping, started doing more of the business development, and started really helping the two owners of that business to grow it. And that was a really great experience, because it gave me confidence that, you can use some of the skills that, even though you didn't particularly like doing that exact thing, those skills can be repurposed, and there's other ways you can use them in businesses or in environments that you do enjoy. So that was, it was a great experience. I really loved working there.
But what a beautiful thing for you to share that you've recognised, because not everyone does that. They think that if I don't do this thing that I've studied for or spent years doing, then it's all going to be a waste and I've got to start again. Whereas you've taken the view that whatever I've done to date, anything I've learned, I can just repurpose that, tap into those skills and apply them elsewhere. That's a very, very much self-aware for someone so young to take that perspective. So where did that come from? Was that
Oh,
have you always been like that when
I
you
had
were
no
growing
idea
up?
I had no idea what I was doing at the time, but I think looking back, you sort of go, "Oh yeah, I think didn't know what I was doing there." I think I think having had very clinically minded parents, it's I think medicine and being a good doctor is really about problem solving and working out how putting together patterns of things and trying to make things better. But I think I've always the household that I grew up in was very much high performance driven. It was a lot of expectation that you achieve, and you achieve high standards, and not really a very celebratory environment of that. It's more expected, that well, of course you did top the class because we're a very high achieving family and we expect that. So I think I've always within my work environment as well always look for opportunities to make improvements and to do well and to be striving for improvement and for performance and having things, doing things in a more efficient or more effective way, which in business and in life can, help you to also be promoted or be seen to be someone that's wanting to achieve and wanting to make things better for the business as well.
Oh, absolutely. But did you find, and coming from the whole overachieving, got to get the top grades and anything short of that was a failure. Did you find that as a result of that approach to life, and obviously a family that espoused this, that there was any downsides to that? Like, did you become one of these overachieving perfectionists who's always driving? Did any of that affect you, or did you kind of escape a lot of that?
Oh, absolutely. I think we are all products of our environment, of in the households that we grow up in, and there's always going to be things that help us, but things that also detract from our happiness. And I think, when I think about the amount of brain power and energy that's put towards, achieving and high achieving, and then, do you feel a sense of reward then when you get, to achieve those things? And I think from my perspective, the way that I parent my girls is very much about helping them to acknowledge what it feels like when they achieve something that's great, and for them to be driven by that feeling and not driven by the feeling of me saying, well done, that's great, we're so proud of you, and what an amazing achievement. So if they do happen to do well in something, I'll say, how do you feel? How do you feel now that you have achieved that? Is it a good feeling to you? Do you like that? And they'll say, oh yeah, no, it feels really good. I'm really proud of myself. And just say, well, that's great. I'm really proud that you feel so proud of yourself. And I think that's probably what the lesson that I learned in growing up in a very high performing household is that striving for those things and feeling an external reward doesn't bring you happiness and doesn't bring you joy, and it's got to be from within. You've got to feel that you're achieving things that you want to, and sometimes you can achieve great things but they might not sit with your values. So I think there's always a downside, but I think if you I've really tried to focus on what makes me happy as well as what makes others happy.
That is absolutely golden, absolutely golden. And how beautiful that you could take, and acknowledge what it can do, what it can create, like this overachieving. I mean, not everyone can do that. I certainly have spent a lot of my life not being able to do that. And so to hear that you've recognized it and are now, transferring that to your girls, absolutely golden.
I'm still a work in progress. I mean, my partner tells me off all the time for being so competitive, because I am really competitive. I take everything to the extreme, even like fishing. So I love to fish, and I will be the one up the first thing in the morning to get out and if I see someone catching a fish down the beach, and I'll be right over there where they are. What bait are you using? Because I've got to win, right? Like that's still ingrained in us, and I know that will never leave me. But I think it's about reflecting on, where you don't have to always be the best at something, and what the I guess what the not the flaws, but what the downside of that is. Like, what does it cost you to always achieve and be the first or be the best at something?
And where has that, and I know we've got to go back to, we're still only just in the golf stage, where has not achieving, or maybe you had an expectation that this is how something would turn out and it hasn't, where has that actually shown up in your life?
All the time. And I think, having to say to the Big Four accounting practice, sorry, I'm leaving. It was quite good that I was leaving to go to become a professional golfer, because they were like, oh, amazing, go do that. Why would you want to stay here? But I think there's often been times where, you have to, where I've had to pull the pin and say, I don't want to do this and I'm not going to. And I think, when people might say, well, is it because you realised you couldn't be the best at that, and so then you stopped, because you didn't want to fail at achieving that? And I think and I see that sometimes in my children too, where especially my eldest, who really wants to do well and really wants to high achieve as well, she's got that gene. It's, then making sure that they put in effort and they still have that push through, that resilience to keep going through and to try things that they may not succeed at. And I've definitely taken some more risks in the second half of my career, I guess, and the new career that I'm in now, that I maybe wouldn't have taken back then. And I feel a lot more confident in taking now that I've understood what it feels like to maybe not always be the best at something, but do a great job and enjoy it as well.
Where else have you not been the best at something?
Oh my gosh, I am
Give
not.
another example.
What's that?
Give me something else, because this is fascinating.
Oh, so I was a terrible runner at school. I never was good at athletics. I was a good swimmer, but I was the worst. So, and anything that involved kind of, just running, I hated it. So I used to make excuses all the time to get out of having to do school sport, or, golf's not really, whilst it's quite an athletic sport now, back then it wasn't really. But I used to hate having to do anything like that. I remember I once we had to do surfing at school, and I really did not want to do surfing. It was, I was a teenager in school, and it was all that body stuff where you've got to get in your bathers in front of everyone, and maybe you've got your period and you're like, oh, I really don't want to go surfing. Like, this is just, and plus I'm in Western Australia, there's so many sharks. And so I actually did a whole semester of surfing. I got a certificate at the end of it saying that I graduated, but I never actually went in the water once.
How did you graduate without going in the water?
Yeah, I don't know how they ended up giving me a certificate, but yeah. So I think things like that, where definitely not very good. I'm not very balance coordinated. I'm really bad at throwing. I think that's why I play golf, because it's the ball stationary. But yeah, I cannot throw anything. And I think, in terms of what what I'm not so great at process, I would say, is like one of the things, or detailed process. So I'm quite a big picture thinker. I like big picture strategy. And when it comes down to like how to create processes around that to make sure that the outcomes are, that detail, that's where I'm not very good at putting together those sort of more detailed, structured plans. My brain just kind of doesn't work in those ways that some amazing people can have that determination and resilience to do that. I really can't.
Oh man, I love it. I love it. It's good to know that you're not actually perfect.
Oh my gosh, I'm far from perfect. Nobody's perfect, are we? I mean, I was just listening to the Perfect podcast this morning, and I think I don't want my children to feel like they have to be perfect. It's actually a lot of fun when you can acknowledge that we're all just trying our best. We're all just trying to, to have a good life. And that's what I always say to my kids. It's just about figuring out what makes you happy, and not feeling that we have to be perfect all the time.
Oh, that's right, because it's way, 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 way too hard. Okay, so to join some dots for me. So you're still in the golf. You're back in Perth now, and I know where you are now. You're the CEO of Menopause Friendly Australia. What's the gap? What happened in between there?
So I actually, when I was working in the golf club and helping that small golf course, I started thinking about going back into the corporate world. I was really liking where I was going, but I thought I really actually quite like the environment of a corporate, and maybe that's where I can sort of start to grow my experience and career. And by that time, I was doing a lot of business development and partnerships in that business. So I then went back into the corporate world, and I worked for the Institute of Company Directors, which was, I loved working for them because not-for-profit, such a huge mission-driven organisation. And one of the first things I did was to support the manager, the director that I worked under, to create a director pipeline project to get more women onto boards. And that I just loved, having been on a board myself and, in a very male misogynistic environment, and sat on a board with one other woman. I felt really passionate about that and really thought that I could use my skills towards that. So I worked there for a while. I was poached by a client, which was in financial services. So I worked in an ASX 50 financial services company doing all of their partnership management. And also the great part of my role was I worked with Indigenous boards as well. So looking at Indigenous governance, and worked up throughout Western Australia in places like Parabadoo, if anyone knows, or Roebourne. So very remote Aboriginal communities. So I got to go and spend some time on country with traditional owners, which was amazing. And then I had a couple of kids and I had a career break, like many people who do take time off. I took 3 years off working and had my 2 children, but I did IVF while I was through those 2 roles at AICD and at the financial services company. So I was doing fertility treatment to conceive my kids during that time as well. So for me, I needed a break from work and everything when I had the kids, and I really wanted to be a at-home mum, so I took some time off then.
And how did that turn out? How did you find going from doing all this work and, such diverse roles to then, and having been a stay-at-home, had young children and know what it's like, it is certainly not easy. How did you go? How did you find that time at home without any other responsibility other than human life?
Yeah, just that, keeping some small humans alive. I struggled with it. I found it, I was quite surprised at how much I struggled. I think I love meeting new people and finding out something about someone that I didn't know before, and I love hearing other people's stories, and I get lots of energy from new people, and that's why I think I loved working in business development and partnerships, because you're constantly meeting new people. And so then when you go straight into a really isolated environment where and look, many of those people that I'd made, good connections with and friendships with, those friendships didn't extend outside of the work environment, even though they worked in other places. But we'd catch up for lunch, or we'd go, I'm going to that event, are you going? Let's go together. And so you have a lot of kind of work friends who are your work friends, but you're not necessarily going to go for coffee with them while you're on maternity leave. And I had a lot of those people in my life, and I really felt lonely. I struggled. It was very different than I thought it was going to be. And I had definitely got to the point where I'd worked really hard, and I thought, my mum stayed at home. She had 4 of us in 5 years, good Irish Catholic. And I thought, I think I'd be pretty happy to be a stay-at-home mum, and, just enjoy my kids and put all my energy into that. But, yeah, it was definitely not for me. And there was a lot of shame that came with that, especially having a very traditional gender role husband who was very much the dad goes to work, the husband goes to work, and the mum stays at home with the kids. So having conversations about, I actually don't think I want to stay at home with the children, there was a lot of shame attached to that, of the type of person that one might be if one says, I want to do something for me as well, and not having that supportive environment. It was very isolating. Yeah.
Oh, it would be. And it's hard enough going from having work where it's quite stimulating and the connections with all these people to not having that, but to then wear the shame with it. And it's quite interesting because it's not something that we talk about a lot as a woman. It's kind of like, oh, how was it? Yeah, it's great. It's great. My beautiful kids. And yet so much comes out of that. So, so what happened then? Where did you go from there? So from being a stay-at-home mum, when did that end, and tell me about how that panned out?
Sure. So when my youngest was 9 weeks old, and my eldest wasn't yet 2. So my girls are 20 months apart, both IVF babies, from the same batch, so they're non-identical twins. 9 weeks old, my little one was, that was when it became pretty apparent to me that my marriage was going to end. and that I would be a single mum and move forward in the world without a husband. And that was very difficult. But looking back now, it was the right decision, and I'm so glad that I did make that decision, because I'm a lot happier now, and my children are really happy, and we've got great life now. But at the time, it was devastating and very, very difficult.
Oh, wow, a 9-week-old and your sleep deprivation and all of that, and dealing with, obviously, you've got your reasons. So that's courage. That is huge courage in itself, just being able to make that call and follow through. But what a beautiful role model that you've provided for your girls around, if something's not right, then move on, which you seem to be doing your whole life so far. Well, what we're learning at the moment, that if it doesn't feel right and things aren't panning out and you're not happy, then your decision is, well, let's move on. And
And I
that
think,
happened again.
yeah, and I think there are times where you have to fix, you have to kind of knuckle down, and I think looking back, I was very fortunate that I was able to leave, and I'm really fortunate in every role that I've had or every job that I've had, I was able to leave. But many people can't. It's more difficult. But yeah, for me, it was kind of, if I stay, there's just no way that I'm going to be happy, and my children then won't be happy because I'm not happy. And having done, many rounds of fertility treatment to have my children, and really wanting to be a great mum and be a great role model for them, I thought, well, actually, I need to step out of this relationship, because I think that I will be miserable, and that won't make me a good mum, or won't make my children have a great experience of being mine. So so it was really hard. It was I went back to work, so I went back to work 3 days a week.
Which work?
Yeah. I actually worked in an accounting practice in business development 3 days a week, which was great because it was an environment that I felt very confident in. I felt very much like I knew. It wasn't really new, if you like. Starting a new job then would have been really hard, but I knew partnership management and business development, and I know accounting, so that was great. But I actually got an au pair, or a live-in nanny, to come and stay with me, which was the best thing I ever did. For me, because I needed that extra support, and someone just to be around as well, in the house. And one of our au pairs is actually coming back to Perth over Christmas, and we're catching up with her for to catch up with my kids. So yeah, it was a tough time, but I definitely felt that I never felt that it wasn't the right thing to do, and that gave me a lot of courage and strength that I could get through it, and the other side would be rewarded for that difficult time. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And as the daughter of a mother who did the same thing, so I was 3 and my brother was 2. We're literally 12 and a half months apart. And at the time, my mum was 26 and she left my father. And it was very amicable. There are reasons why they did it. But as a little girl growing up, I grew up knowing that if you're not happy, then you have the choice to do something about it. And left her as a single mum, 26, 2 young kids under 3, and had to go back to work and do all of that. But as the kid, what a beautiful role model that created. So right back at you for being that role model for your daughters, and putting your happiness first. Because as a mother, putting your happiness first shows them that they can do the same too.
Absolutely. And I think that, when you're on the plane and there's the safety announcement, and it's like, put on your mask first before helping others. And I had many conversations actually with my ex-husband about that, and saying exactly that I know you don't understand this. You think that being a mother should just be the most important thing in my world, and that for me to say that it's not is really offending you, because that's not what you've been brought up to believe, and that's not how you show up in your family. But for me, I know that if I don't look after my own happiness, I am not any good as a mother. I can't support them. I can't nurture and love them in the way that they need to if I'm miserable, and if I'm not feeling a sense of being, happy in my life and where I'm at. So yeah, it was really difficult, but I think it has certainly rubbed off on my children. They definitely, we talk all the time about what makes us happy and in our days, and the fact that we just want to live happy lives and have a nice time while we're here as well.
Oh, that's glorious. Oh, that's absolutely glorious. And from a hard moment has come such a beautiful learning for you and for your daughters and their lives and what they've got to look forward to. So how, going back, you're still in the accounting firm.
All right,
You're going to get out of these numbers game.
Told
That happened.
we didn't have enough time. So I worked in the accounting firm for a while, and then I think when you have to go drop your kids to daycare, or if you've got a au pair looking after them, and you're going and you're leaving them to go and work, it gives you a real sense of what am I achieving when I go to work? So am I leaving my children just to do a job that gives me no fulfillment and that I don't feel aligned with as in my values, or am I doing something that I feel really proud of that I can then come home at the end of the day and talk to my children about? And the reason, and kids are brutal, like at this age, when you're tearing them off for you to go to daycare and you're like, why are you leaving me, mummy? You need to have an answer. Like, why are you leaving me? So for me, it was really a time where I sort of reflected and went, okay, if I'm leaving my children, I really need to be loving and doing something that has purpose. So I left the accounting firm and I started working for the Smith family, which is an amazing not-for-profit that helps children from disadvantage to keep them engaged at school. So keep prioritising them in the education system to make sure that they do get a good education and can then go on to live fulfilled lives. So I loved working with the Smith family, but it was a full-on job. It actually was a full-time job, and my kids were struggling. I was struggling with the full-time hours. So again, I took some time to reflect, and I feel so fortunate I was able to just quit my job, and I had some money saved that I could live off for a while so that I could do that. There's so many people who can never do that, and I was really felt so privileged I could. And then I thought, well, you know what? Bugger you, Dad. Bugger you, Mum. I'm going to go and do something in medicine. I got to the point where I went, I think I'm just going to ignore my parents. They don't, what they said was rubbish, and actually I think I really love it. So I decided to become a nurse, which my dad thought was absurd.
Of course you decided to become a nurse. You haven't done that yet.
Yeah. So, yeah, but it was, I really wanted to do something around health, and I thought nursing's a really nice broad degree. You get to learn so many different skills, and it was great. And while I was studying, I did a master's of nursing. And while I was studying, I also worked for the ambulance service here in Western Australia, St John Ambulance. And I did patient transfer, so people that are not critically ill, transferring them from hospitals to nursing homes or into tertiary care. And that was great because I got to go in and out of a lot of clinical areas, hospitals, and see, under the covers of lots of different areas of health. And it was during COVID as well. So that was a really interesting time to be involved on the front line and seeing all of that unfold from a clinical governance perspective and how it was managed and within the hospital environment, but also within the ambulance service. So that was a great experience, even though it was a terrible, obviously, COVID, but it was a really fascinating learning experience for me to see how these sorts of things are managed and how they unfold within organisations too.
And no surprise, you did your master's in nursing, right? You didn't just go and do nursing. Of course, you did your master's.
It was actually quicker. So it was actually a 2-year degree to do a master's as opposed to a 3.5-year degree if you do an undergrad. So again, I just love efficiency, right? So like, how do I get there quicker? And it was more intense, obviously, because it's a master's level of study. But we do the same number of clinical hours as undergrads in terms of on the wards and doing your clinical practice. And that was really tough because you do I think the longest stretch I did was 10 weeks of prac. So you're working in a hospital, shift work, unpaid, full-time for 10 weeks. And when you get to your later units of the degree, you're really having to kind of show and demonstrate that you can act autonomously. So it was very difficult to get through it. And I'm really glad to see that the Women's Equality Economic Task Force has just released a report that said that they feel that nursing students should be paid for their prac, which I fully support, having been there. And many of the students that I was in the course with, they were working full-time shift work, and then they were going and working as carers at night time just to support themselves to get through the degree. So when we've got a shortage of nurses, I think it's a great thing that we can do to help keep people in nursing and to support more people to do the nursing degree and mature age students as well. But yeah, it was a great degree. I'm so glad I did it. I loved doing it, but it was working for the ambulance service, having kids that were 3 and 5, and then also doing full-time shift work it was pretty brutal.
Oh, because I was going to say, through all of this, you've still got 2 little kids at home. Like, seriously. And I know there's daycare and an au pair and all of that you can tap into.
Yeah, but that time I didn't have an au pair anymore because I had a new relationship and had a partner, but who I'm now still with. But we also with divorce, one of the things that some people say, one of the only benefits of divorce is you get some time to yourself. So when your kids are going, certain days on and off with you and with their dad, then I did actually get some more time to focus on study and also to do some of those shifts in the ambulance that meant that I was able to get through it. But yes, certainly without help, it would have been impossible.
Yeah, and that now goes back to something you said earlier at the very beginning of the conversation, that you do this when your kids are with you. Now that makes sense. You've closed off that loop. So talk to me then about how, because I'm gathering now with the work you're doing, you're not a nurse anymore. How did you go from that? How did Menopause Friendly Australia come about?
So I'm still a registered nurse. I went and worked in clinical research after I finished my degree at a wonderful not-for-profit in Western Australia, part of the Harry Perkins Institute called Linear. They do amazing trials for new treatments for cancer and also for other indications. So at the forefront of new innovation in healthcare, which I loved. I absolutely loved it. But I really I felt this sense of lack of motivation. I was having some physical symptoms that were all of a sudden. I had heart palpitations. I had lots of mood changes, and I just didn't feel myself. Really struggled to get up to go to work, and that was something that was not really me at all. I've always been really driven. Stopped exercising, had no motivation to exercise, and I started yelling at my kids, which is probably the worst thing that, for me, that was the worst thing, is just not having that patience for my children anymore. And especially because like I said before, now we do week on, week off. So really, I want to show up for my children in the week that they're with me. And I felt that I was not showing up in the way that I wanted to. So it was really, really difficult. I was really unhappy, and I thought, what is going on for me as well? What is going on? So I went to see a GP. GP gave me antidepressants. I just was like, I don't feel like this is depression. And then when I started having the heart palpitations and some urinary symptoms, lots of frequent UTIs and other things as well, I sort of started looking around at, like, well, what is happening at this time of life for us that's making me feel this way? And I, also had done an internship with Brandon Capital, which is a life sciences venture capital fund. And I met another person during that who was also kind of interested in women's health and innovation. And we started talking about, this time of life for women being this kind of real dead zone, if you like, for us. Once we finished having children, before we have chronic health concerns, there's not really any support for us to stay healthy or any information about what's going on for us. So started looking into that and thinking, well, yeah, actually perimenopause and menopause, this is a time of life for us when we should be trying to keep as healthy as possible. But many of us don't even know the basic facts about what happens to us during this time. My kids know more about periods than I knew about menopause. And most of my friends, I asked them, do you know anything about menopause? And they kind of go, well, we're not talking about that yet. We're not there yet, are we? still, but if we're 40, so, let's not talk about that. That's like the future problem for me. But actually, it's in doing some digging around, realised that no, that actually it happens a lot sooner than we think in our early 40s. And there are some longer term health concerns that we need to also know about, but also from the workplace perspective, I found it really hard to navigate those symptoms at work. And I also hid my IVF when I was doing IVF from my employer. So I'm not one of those people that I don't feel comfortable often in the workplace talking a lot about my own personal health or my experiences. I like to kind of get on with it, if you like, but I just couldn't get on with it anymore. And so, I thought, well, this isn't really right. And one of my values is fairness. And I thought, this isn't really fair, is it, for us, that we don't actually know anything about this? It's going to happen to all of us. There's this huge shame and stigma attached to it and this ageism around it. So I thought I better do something about that.
Of course you should.
Yeah. So for me, again, I've always loved efficiency, effectiveness, get things done the easiest possible way. And rather than reinvent the wheel, I thought, well, there must be some other support somewhere who is doing great things around this. And I discovered actually the UK have been taking action on menopause for many years. And I came across an organisation doing the best work in it. And I thought, well, I'm going to have a chat with the person who owns that or the founder and see if they'll help us here in Australia. So that's what I did.
Oh, I love that. And can I just go back to your personal story? So it was menopause. Did you go back to your doctor and say, I just don't think that I don't need antidepressants? Can you tell us a bit about that? Because I had exactly the same experience.
And so many women do, because when we don't know that this is maybe hormone related, it sounds and looks and feels like we're depressed, because we often go into a doctor's surgery. It's really overwhelming. We feel this sense of not being able to continue in the way that we used to be able to show up. So we just burst into tears, it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's wrong with me. And we sound like we're depressed. And so, our GPs are also not very well skilled around menopause, and there's lots of different reasons why, but many of them stem back to the WHI study that linked hormones with breast cancer, and textbooks being completely stripped of menopause. And I didn't learn anything in my nursing degree about menopause, nothing. I went back and dug the books out from the bookshelf and looked at spoke to some of my colleagues and said, did I miss a lecture or something when we talked about women's hormones?
Oh my God, because I was going to say, well, at least you've done your nursing, so you've got a heads up and you've got a medical family. You must know about this.
That's it. And that's what I say, to people. And there's a menopause inquiry that's just been announced in the Senate. And I was talking to one of the people that's moved the motion for that. And I said to them, look, if I can't identify it, I've got an obstetrician gynecologist father, a midwife mother, a nursing degree, and I don't know anything about it, and I can't identify in myself, who will, So we need to get this message out. We need to tell women and men, everyone should know, what are the basics about this time of life, but also changing the mindset around it, because there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of ageism, there's a lot of negativity that can be associated with menopause, and we don't think that should be the case. Many of the women that are in my life, that are in this life phase, are incredible, and you know what, we get to the point where we just say, I just don't really care that much anymore about what people think. I'm going to do what I think is right, and often that is amazing in organisations and in the world, to have that motivation to get on with things in a new, renewed way. But to get to that point, I think there's a lot of education that needs to happen, especially within the workplace, because 81% of us will be working through our menopause transition. And like I've said, you can't leave those symptoms behind when you go into work. They're coming with you. So you need to, I think workplaces are a great place to start opening up the conversation and educating people on the facts of menopause so that they can get the right support when they need it. But also, again, changing that narrative around it.
Oh, completely. And I know I was at a conference on Friday. It was Women in Finance, and there was 500 people in the room. The one question that got asked during a panel session the question was around menopause. And then luckily the panel session that I was actually involved in, we did talk about menopause, but it is topical, even younger girls. And I know, Grace, just when I was diagnosed, I thought it was depression and that too. And then I ended up going back to see the GP, and my GP wasn't there. So another GP stepped in who specialised in women's health. And she eventually came back and said, no, you haven't got depression at all. You've got perimenopause. I'd never even heard the word perimenopause. So you're going through something that you've never even heard the word of. I fell off a confidence cliff. I thought I'd lost my mind. Everything in my world was changing. And seriously, when I say all it was something that half the population go through. So what does Menopause Friendly Australia do? What's your primary purpose of the business?
So our purpose is to help women to thrive through all stages of life, specifically in the workplace. So we do that through evidence-based education and support within workplaces. But we also go within the workplace environment and help those that are building a menopause support program to make it easy for them to do that. So workplaces have got a lot on their plate. They've got so many different things that they've got to do within the workplace now. And it's great to see that our workplaces are supporting us, because we give so much of our energy and time to our work. So we acknowledge that it is time consuming to create plans of how to make people feel included at work. So we've got ready-made resources and evidence-based tools for workplaces to roll out, so that they can give their evidence base to the people where they are, to any women and men within organisations. And we also provide lots of different ways that people can track symptoms and have a conversation that's meaningful at work, so that they, people like me who might not feel comfortable talking about my health or my personal experience at work, giving them the tools and the practical support to have a really open, genuinely helpful conversation. And for those people that are supporting others, giving them the tools as well of how to have a conversation. Because many, people say to me, now that I know what symptoms of menopause are, and some of them I'm surprised about, loss of confidence and, muscle aches and pains and migraines, I feel like I've got someone in my team who might be going through this, and I don't think they know. How do I, I don't want to insult them by saying menopause, they may be not ready to hear that. They don't know. So how can I start that conversation in a way that they're going to feel comfortable in it and get the right support, and in a way that I don't get myself in trouble either, So again, it's like mental health was, 15 years ago in the workplace. We were a bit scared of how to have that conversation. We thought, will it mean that they'll look at me differently? Will I be overlooked for promotions? Will I be feeling as though people are thinking that I'm not competent to do my job if I talk about what I'm experiencing from a mental health perspective? And that's the same thing with menopause. And I hear many people say that, I'm really concerned that if I say I'm in menopause, I'll get overlooked for promotions. People won't think that I'm capable. So how can I have a conversation about what I'm experiencing to get that little bit of flexibility or support, but still feel that I can contribute, grow, and that I'll be taken seriously in the workplace for what I can do, and not stigmatized because of these negative associations that we have with menopause. So yeah, that's what we're.
Oh, man, that's good. I love, though, that it's not just equipping those that are, say, leaders or the managers that are looking up and have got staff that are going through this, but how do the staff as humans actually share that this is what they're going through without thinking it's going to be, it'll cripple their career or just mean that they feel like they're not going to be taken as seriously as they would have. And I know so many women that have made quite big decisions in their life because of all of these symptoms, which the decision was triggered because of it, but maybe it might not have been the decision they would have made if they had more knowledge or information or tools to actually support it. So this is just quickly, do you get much pushback on any businesses where, you're sort of talking to them about this? Do any of them push back or go, nah, we don't need it? Or
I think anyone who's experienced menopause or been through this and trying to navigate it at work, they say to me, thank God you're here. Thank God you're here, because there's so many people that I know in our workplace that can benefit from this, and you're going to really help and encourage them to seek support, not only from within the workplace, but outside of the workplace, to better equip them to talk to their GP about what they're experiencing, to get the support, because there's things we can do that make menopause a better experience. We don't have to struggle on and go through it. We don't have to push through and just try and get on with it. There's things that we can do to make it a better experience. So the workplaces that we're speaking to in Australia have been really embracing this. There are some challenges around certainly some of the male-dominated workplaces that we've started working with. But what we've seen actually is then once the fear is removed and the conversation is started, there's a groundswell of support of people coming up and saying, I feel so validated and heard, and I've been trying to talk to my GP about what I'm experiencing. We had one person actually at a course that I was at in Melbourne who came up to us afterwards and was in tears, saying, I feel so heard and validated, and now I feel a renewed sense of, I'm crying because I'm almost excited that someone's heard me, and that I'm not making it all up, and that it's not all in my head, that this is real, and what I'm experiencing is menopause, and I'm going to now go and feel so much more confident to find another GP to get that help, because I'm really struggling. And so I think when you see how much of a difference it can make to people's lives, and workplaces to see that as well, especially when we have a 22.8% gender pay gap, women retiring with 30% fewer superannuation savings, women in their 50s being the most highest growing demographic, homelessness. There's a huge imperative for us to be talking about this, to make some change, to ensure that women can stay at work for as long as they want. And there's some really engaged workplaces that are leading the way and really showing their commitment by joining Menopause Friendly Australia and becoming an accredited workplace. So it's been, from my perspective, really great to see. The UK, we've got over 400 members and over 60 of them are accredited. So we'd like to make every workplace in Australia a menopause friendly one, so that nobody has to struggle in silence at work through this too.
Oh, I love it. And it affects half the population. So
and the thing too, I mean, you think about relationship breakdowns, there's so many physical things that go on, loss of libido, there's embarrassing symptoms, dry vagina, these things are a reality for most women. And in relationships at this time, we can feel irritated, we look at our partner, why is he breathing so loud? I've never noticed he crunching his cereal so loud in the mornings. It's really annoying me. But also we're feeling demotivated and we don't really want to talk to, it can be a really challenging time for relationships. And many people, I actually had a guy that I worked with in the ambulance service. I was walking down the street in my local neighbourhood, and this ambulance officer, guy, full ambulance uniform, started running towards me, which for most people would probably be quite confronting. But I was like, oh, it must be someone I know from when I worked in the ambulance service. And he came running up to us like, Grace, I've seen all the stuff that you've been posting about menopause. I just saw you and I thought I've got to grab you because my wife is going through it and we're really struggling. I think we're going to get divorced. It is so bad, Grace. She has turned into a completely different person. She's yelling at the kids. She doesn't want to do the things that we used to do. She's going out drinking all night and not coming home. And she's got a really corporate high-flying career and she's just really struggling. It's horrible and I don't know what to do. And can you help me? I've seen you posting about menopause. And so I talked to him about what was going on and gave him some support on where to find some more information and where to direct his partner for some support. And then he contacted me 2 weeks later and he said, I cannot believe the difference it's made for my partner. She went and saw a great GP. She is now taking hormone replacement therapy, and overnight she feels like she's back to herself. And she said to me, I feel possessed before. She said, I feel possessed. I'm doing and saying things that I can't control. I'm exploding my career and I'm exploding my life. And he said, I cannot believe that by taking a simple patch and a tablet that it's made such a huge difference to her. And I hear those stories all the time, and that is what drives me to make sure that people get the information, support, and HRT is a very low risk treatment that's available that can really help people. It's not for everyone, so everyone should seek medical advice before they go down that pathway, but it's definitely life-changing for many people. And so for us, it's just about getting the message out about all the different options available, directing people to the right support so that when they need it, they can get it, and they don't struggle in silence and leave work early and feel that they're not able to carry on.
Leave work early or leave a marriage early, leave it prematurely. I must say there's times where my husband would just be eating like dinner, sitting next to me, and I wanted to put needles in his eyes. And it was so nice, down the track when I worked out what it was. It's like, I'm not the only one. It's really normal. And I'd like to stay married now, thank you.
Absolutely.
If I get that gate now, I'm happy to.
And so many of the men that we train in workplaces or that come to our sessions, they say, I had no idea that this was so. I thought it was just hot flushes. I didn't know that there were all these other symptoms, and now I feel that I can actually have a conversation about it with my partner, and I'm not going to get stabbed in the eye or a frying pan thrown at my head or something. And I think how many people's lives, marriages can we change by simply talking about something that's inevitable for everyone, reducing the stigma and shame associated, and supporting people to get help. I mean, it's so simple when you think about it, and so shocking that we haven't done something about it sooner.
So shocking, but so good. And I'm so glad that all of the experience that you've had to date, saying no to all of those roles along the way, gave you the business acumen that was necessary, the health education that you were seeking, albeit against your parents' advice, that have led you to running such an important cause, or leading the way for such an important cause for so many people that literally is going to be life-changing. We're still at its infancy, very early days. So anyone that wants any information, I'm assuming they go to your website, which I'll pop the details, Menopause Friendly Australia, in the show notes. But just quickly, Grace, on that note, what's the next courageous move for you?
Oh, I think
please stay in the industry.
If I change jobs now, we'll have to really reassess where I'm at. No, so I'm absolutely loving where I am right now and helping and supporting people. As I've said, it's been so rewarding already to see workplaces taking action on menopause. There's a Senate inquiry which we're getting involved in to make sure that there'll be systemic change. So I'd love you to direct people to menopausefriendly.au, but also if you've got a personal experience that you'd like to share with the Senate inquiry, I really encourage you to I'll send you the notes, Kim, in the notes of where to do this, but to speak about what you've experienced and to talk about how it's impacted you. Good stories as well. Some people have really great stories to share through menopause, and we don't want to make it all doom and gloom. There's some great things that can come from this time of life, but certainly getting involved in the menopause inquiry is great. And I'll add some other links in there for people to also get some extra information from those evidence-based sources as well.
Oh, that is wonderful. And Grace, on behalf of all the women in this world, thank you for the journey you've been on today, the courage to say no when you've said no, that has led you to doing the work that you're doing now, because anything that can help and make the world a happier place, which is what you're essentially doing, is going to be of benefit to everyone. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to hearing your journey from here.
Oh, thank you, Kim. It's been my pleasure.